Hello and welcome back everyone to the latest episode of An American in Thailand, airing every Friday. This program is broadcast to you from Ratchamakan University of Technology, Peranakan, and I will be bringing this program to you in two parts. For the first part, I'll introduce a certain topic about being an American here living in Thailand. Could be about food, travel, culture. We have different topics every week. And we'll then take a break. And in the second part of the program, we'll get into more examples and more specifics. Welcome, everyone. My name is Gary Gray, and I am your host for An American in Thailand. Obviously, I am an American, and we are here in Thailand. I am an English teacher here at Ratchamakan University of Technology, Peranakan, and I've been living here for about 8 years, a little more than that actually now. And so I think I've been here long enough to kind of get a feel for the culture and the people, the food, everything like that. And I had also visited here several times before I moved here because I needed to know if I wanted to move here. And I liked it here. I like the people, I like the culture, and so now I've been here for 8 years. So for today's topic, what we're going to talk about is food. Now, we've talked about food a couple of times before. One time we talked just generally about cooking. Like, the kitchens are so different. That was kind of a shock to me here, moving to Thailand, because I live in a condo. And so in the condo, the kitchens are usually smaller. But unless you are willing to pay a lot of money and you live in an area where a lot of foreigners live, most of the condos here don't have what a Westerner would consider to be like a real kitchen. There's basically a sink, a microwave, and a refrigerator. That's it. If you want a normal oven, you have to go to the store and buy it, and then it sits on your counter and takes up all of your counter space. If you want to have a stovetop, you have to go out and buy like single burner stovetops. And I can tell you, since I do love to cook, and I have both of those, that they're not the best in the world. Some of them don't work so great. So that was one of the topics we talked about. Another one we talked about were the top 10 Thai dishes and whether or not I like them. I do like most of them. I will admit I probably do not like Thai food as much as most Westerners do. It is one of the most popular foreign foods for people from America. Chinese is probably more popular, although we change a lot of the ingredients to Americanize it. So you can get real Chinese food, but especially if you're in a city and there's a large Chinese population there. But a lot of the Chinese food in America is not really authentic Chinese. More of the Thai food is, even some of that isn't. For example, they'll usually take down the spice some, because most Westerners don't like it as spicy, but most of the ingredients will be quite the same. They'll be similar. It will be close. And when you consider the size of the countries we're talking about, like what type of foreign foods are really popular in America, Thailand is probably one of the smaller countries. Along with Italy, Italian food is extremely popular in America. So Italy and Thailand are probably the two smallest countries that have some of the biggest influence on what people like in America. I mention that because, as I said, I probably don't like Thai food as much as most people do. But I did still, all of the Thai dishes we went over, most of them I did like. The few that I did not is something like samtam, papaya salad. It's too spicy for me. I usually actually like spicy stuff. Sometimes if I go to Khao San and order tom yum, because they see I'm a white person, they assume that I'm tourist there, and so they take the spice level way down. and it's not spicy enough. I actually prefer it spicy. But even papaya salad is usually too spicy for me. I mean, I know you can adjust the spice level, so maybe if I made it myself, I would like it, but generally it's too spicy. So I'm not a big fan of that. I also don't really like fish very much, so the amount that fish sauce is used in cooking here is something that I'm not really thrilled with. For example, a lot of chicken wings are prepared with fish sauce. Why do I want my chicken to taste like fish? If I wanted fish, I'd order fish. I don't usually order fish very often. As I said, I don't really like fish very much. But there are certain types of fish that I order occasionally here. So I'm not against fish. But I don't want fish sauce on my chicken wings. So I think that is overused for my liking here in Thailand. And the other thing I'm not a big fan of, I don't know why, this is just my preference. And I've even done some of this cooking myself. In fact, I recently cooked a meal like this. It was okay. But it's using peanuts or even peanut sauce in dishes. And it's not that I don't like peanuts. I do. I eat them quite often by themselves. I don't like them in my meal. Again, just my own preference. So any types of foods that come with, any types of dishes that come with the peanuts in there, or the Thai peanut sauce, or anything like that, I'm not a very big fan of that. Nonetheless, I still do like most of the Thai food. And even one of the ones that I just mentioned, that I was including in the not really like, the ones with the Thai peanut sauce or peanuts in them, I don't really dislike those. They're fine. I just don't find them very exciting. So, what we're going to talk about today is just two of my favorites. We're going to talk about Mularb and Tom Yum Gai. And what we're going to do in the second half of the program, where I'm supposed to give you more specifics, more details, is I'm actually going to tell you how I prepare them, because I have cooked both. I will admit I have cooked Tom Yum Gai a lot more than Mularb. I've only done Mularb a couple times. But I will tell you how I prepare them. It's a little bit different from how Thai people would normally prepare them. And in some ways, maybe you will think, oh, crazy American, what are you doing? And you will think that's a silly thing to do. But in other ways, maybe I will give you some good ideas. Because some of it comes from cultural differences. Like what we do with the chicken for Tom Yum Gai, for example. It's a bit of a cultural difference. Maybe you'll think that's a good idea. Okay. So first of all, before we get into that, that's going to be the second half of our program. So let's finish up the first half of our program here with me just telling you basically what I like about these two dishes. Why do I like Mularb and Tom Yum Gai? There's actually something similar about them, which is probably why I like them both. They're both sour and spicy. It's a combination that I like, personally. And I'll be honest with you, it's very different from Western-style cuisine, Western-style food. So my guess is this would not be most Americans' favorite dish. Favorite dishes, there's two of them. I think most Americans would probably prefer something like Pad Thai. When you talk about Thai food in America, that is the dish that everyone says they like. Oh, I love Pad Thai. Pad Thai's okay. I prefer something with a little more flavor. I personally think Pad Thai is a little bit boring. The only thing I like, the only Thai meal I like is kind of boring, honestly, is fried rice. And even that, I like to squeeze a lot of lemon over it. Give it that sour flavor. So that is probably why I like them. It's hard for me to say why. It's hard to kind of explain sometimes why you like a flavor. You just do. You just do. You like it or you don't like it. But I think because that's what's the same about them, Mularb and Tom Yum Gai, they both have that spicy sour combination. So I think that's what it is. So that's really what I like about these two dishes. They're my two favorite dishes here in Thailand. Again, there are others I like. I just mentioned fried rice. Fried rice, nice, easy, simple. It's actually not that simple to make. Mularb is easier. It depends on the ingredients you're using, but I usually like to have the carrots in there and things like that. You have to dice them up really small for the fried rice. So actually, fried rice takes longer to do than it seems like it should, because it seems very simple. That's why a lot of people like to buy it on the street, because they'll be cooking it in big batches where they can have several servings of it made all at once. So, again, these aren't the only two things that I like. There are plenty of Thai foods that I do like, but mularb and tom yum gai are my two favorites. That's what we're going to talk about today. So in the second half of our program, again, we're going to discuss how I make them. And maybe I can even give you some ideas on how to make yours. Even though I'm foreigner, so I don't know all the tricks of the best way to make Thai food, I might have some ideas that you will actually like. Who knows? Because I've cooked especially the tom yum, I've cooked many, many times. I've only cooked the mularb a few times. But we'll see. Maybe I'll have some ideas for you. So let's go ahead and take a quick break right now. Welcome back, everyone. All right, so we're talking about my favorite Thai dishes, and now we're going to talk about how I like to cook them here in Thailand. I know a lot of Thai folks don't even like to cook. They usually just go out to eat. Part of that is because of what we talked about in the first part of our program with the kitchens not being as big and having all the equipment that we normally have in the West. But I know that there are certainly plenty of people out there who do like to cook. My best friend here, he and his wife, they love cooking. I have some students that even like cooking, although most of the students, they're students. They don't cook, but I do have a couple of adult classes I sometimes teach, and some of my adult students, they like to cook. So, again, as I mentioned in the first part of the program, my two favorite dishes are mularb and tom yum gai. So what I want to focus on here, as far as how I cook them, is I want to talk to you about the differences, the things I do that are different from the way most Thai people will cook their mularb or their tom yum. All right? So I'm not just going to go through like the whole recipe and say how you're supposed to make it. Now, most of you that like to cook and you're Thai, you know how to cook mularb. You know how to cook tom yum gai. I'm going to talk about what I'm doing that's different. Okay? And I will tell you that most of my differences about how I normally cook them have to do with other ingredients other than like the main meat. For example, we have tom yum gai, so that's got chicken in it. And we've got mularb, so that's got pork in it. So what I'm talking about is differences mostly not related to the chicken or the pork. There's one difference with the chicken that we will talk about. There is one difference with that. But it's important to mention that because though these differences will apply to any larb or any tom yum. If you're making chicken larb or fish larb or tom yum goon, fine. What I'm going to talk about here today would apply to those as well. Okay? So let's start out with mularb, because this one is less different. I do less things differently. And in fact, some of the things I'm going to say that I do differently, you might think, that's not different. That's how I make it. Well, a lot of Thai food, and this is one of the things I do like about Thai food, is very adjustable. You can make it different ways. Add that ingredient. Don't add this ingredient. Whatever. You can do many different things with it. That's one of the wonderful things about Thai meals. So what I'm going to talk about is what I do that most people I've seen do not do. So it is possible, especially with the moulard, because my differences here are smaller. I think with Tom Yum Gai, some of the things I do, almost no one does, especially one of the steps I'm going to talk about. But with the moulard, you may hear me say, oh, why don't you do this instead? And you may think to yourself, I already do that. Yes, there are many different ways to make moulard. I'm just trying to tell you what I think is the best way, both for flavor and to make it easy to cook. Or easy to eat, as you're going to see with the case of Tom Yum, with the case of my Tom Yum. It's more about easier to eat. It might actually be a little harder to cook. It takes a little longer. It's not that hard, but it takes a little bit longer. Okay, so for the moulard, first thing I do that's a little different. Again, some people do this. If you go look online, find recipes, some of them will recommend you do this, some of them don't. But I do like to put a little bit of water in the pot before cooking the pork. And actually, as you'll hear, there's going to be a second step I do also before cooking the pork. Now, some recipes don't call for this because the pork will give up some moisture. Here's the problem. The pork doesn't give up a lot of water, and it kind of depends on the pork you get. And the second thing is, because our stoves here in Thailand are not very good, and a lot of the pots aren't either. Some of the most common brands of pots are not very high quality. It's very easy for the pork to stick or burn or something like that. And I don't really want to add oil to this because that's going to kind of change the texture a little bit. So just put a little bit of water in your pan before you add the pork. Okay? And you're going to heat up the water. And before you add the pork, as I said, there's going to be a second thing. Put in some kaffir lime leaves to add some flavor to that water. Once again, there are a few recipes that do call for this. Most do not. So I do think that this is a difference compared to most. But what we're trying to do here is increase the flavor. The flavor's already quite good, right? I mean, how much flavor is this going to add? Not much, admittedly. So if you don't want to do this, fine. It's not a big deal. It's not going to change the flavor of the moulard very much. Just helps a little bit. Adds a little more flavor, especially since you've added in that water, which of course water has no flavor, so that may try to pull the flavor down a little bit. So go ahead and add in some kaffir lime leaves. Let them just sit there in the water as the water heats up for a little while to get that flavor out. But you do want to remove the lime leaves because most people don't like to eat them. There's a way where they can get crispy, where I actually like to eat them. I like to eat the crispy lime leaves, but most of the time when you cook them like this, they're not going to get crispy. So you want to get those out of there. So then after the lime leaves have been in the water for a while, and if you want enough water to actually boil the lime leaves, maybe put in even a little bit more water. Some people, like I said, don't put any water in. But if you're going to boil the leaves, then some of that water is going to go away because you're boiling. So maybe even add a little bit more water. It's up to you how long to boil or heat up, whatever, the lime leaves in there. But remove the lime leaves. Make sure you still have a little water left in there before you add in the pork. Now, to cook the pork, that's all. There's no change in cooking the pork. That's the same recipe. Okay, then one thing I do, which again I've seen a couple of recipes do, but most of them do not, is I put in the roasted ground rice before removing the pork from the heat. Why do I do this? A couple of reasons. Number one, you want to make sure they're toasted or roasted. Toasted or roasted, however they're prepared. Some of them are a little bit under toasted. It helps bring the flavor out a little bit. So go ahead and cook it a little bit more. Second of all, because of the water you have in there, now a lot of times you're not going to really have much, if any, water left, but you might have a little bit. it's okay for the ground rice to absorb a little bit of that. You don't want it to absorb much. The ground rice is supposed to add kind of a crunchy texture. You don't want that rice getting soft. So you don't want it to absorb much water at all. But sometimes that ground rice, if it's not ground well enough, can have some really kind of slightly larger pieces in there that are pretty hard, that are kind of hurt your teeth. So it's okay if it softens up a little bit too. So it's good for getting it a little more cooked, getting it slightly softer. Just put it in right at the end though. You don't want to cook it for very long. You don't want that. It's already cooked. It's roasted. You don't want that cooking. So just right at the end, right when the pork is ready, right when you're ready to pull it off the stove, put the roasted ground rice in and just cook it for just a minute or two. That's it. And then take it off the heat. Okay. And then the other thing I like to do, and this is something you have to do in advance, is dehydrate and crush your own pepper beforehand. And I like to use that instead of chili peppers. Why? Why do I prefer that? First of all, it's a little easier to control how much heat you have because you're just using the flakes, so it's a little bit at a time, little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. Second of all, most people, now you may be different. I do know some people that are not like this, but most people do not like to actually eat the red chili peppers. They want it in there for flavor, but they don't want to actually eat the peppers themselves. Well, by adding in the crushed red pepper, the crushed pepper, and by the way, you can buy crushed red pepper. I prefer to make my own. Once it's dehydrated, it lasts a long time, so you can have it around forever. And if you use it quickly, it's going to be nice and fresh. It's going to be fairly strong. It'll have all the flavor you want. So I recommend using that. So all you need to do is buy the peppers, dehydrate them, which is pretty easy to do. You can even do it in an air fryer. Go look that up. That's a little bit of a trick because a lot of people don't have an oven and you can't really do it in a microwave. You might have an air fryer. You can do it in there. So dehydrate and crush your own pepper beforehand. And then add that instead of the chili peppers. Again, unless you like it super hot. If you actually like to eat the red peppers, the red chili peppers, okay, then don't take that advice. Just do it the way you normally do it. All right, so that's it. All of the other, and obviously that's not all the steps for making moulard. As I told you, I'm going to focus on the things I do that are a little different. Everything else I do is all the same. You don't want to add like the green onion and the cilantro. You don't want to add that before it's done cooking, before it's like while it's cooking or anything. No, you add that afterwards. Just the same. Everything else is the same. What I'm focusing on is the differences. Okay, so now let's move on to the Tom Yum Guy. Here my differences are a little more significant. I actually have fewer differences. They're just kind of a bigger deal as far as their impact and what they do. So the first one I'm going to mention, and this is the only difference I have with any of the meat here in these. I told you there's one difference with the chicken. And this is to buy boneless chicken that you cut up. Boneless chicken breast, usually. Usually you want to use breast. It's fine. But buy the boneless chicken. It's very common in most Asian countries that I've seen to just chop up the meat and leave all the bones in there. And about 90% of the Tom Yum Guy that I've ordered here in Thailand is like that. The very few places I've gone that actually use boneless chicken, they are mostly tourist places. Almost everywhere leaves the bones in the chicken. Don't do that. It's not convenient to eat. Then you have to pick it up with your hands and eat it. Nobody wants to do that with soup. It's soup. You're supposed to be able to just eat it with a spoon. So just So you don't want to have the bones in the chicken. So use boneless chicken. Also, and this is kind of related, it has to do with making it easier to eat. And this is probably the biggest thing I do that's very different from what anyone I've seen in Thailand do. Is there are several inedible ingredients. Ingredients that you don't want to eat because they're too hard to chew or something like that. Like the lemongrass, the kaffir lime leaves, the galangal, and for most people, the chili pepper. Maybe with the mular, maybe you're someone who actually likes to eat the chili peppers. Most people don't like to eat the chili peppers. So we have those 4 ingredients, which when you're eating your tom yum, you've always got to kind of try to avoid or pick out of there while you're eating, whatever. Here's what I do. And this step, I will admit, will take you longer. It will also cost you a tiny bit more money. A tiny bit. It's pretty cheap. These ingredients are all pretty cheap, so it's not going to cost you much more money. But here's what I do. Okay? You want to boil those ingredients first. You maybe want to kind of crush them or cut them into small pieces. Not too small pieces. They don't have to be that small. You're boiling them. It's fine. So it's not that much extra work. I mean, the galangal already gets sliced into slices. So we're not talking about that much extra work. You just want to be able to get the flavor out of them more. And that's easier to do if you crush them or like I did with the lemongrass. I'll cut it into relatively small chunks. So cut those up, throw those in your pot with water, and boil them. Now, here's why it's going to take a little while longer to cook and why it's going to cost you a little more money. You want to boil them for a long time because you want to get all the flavor out of them. Now, you may say, well, when you boil it, the water level is going to go down. You're going to have to add more water. That's going to thin it all back out again. Yeah, well, yes and no. Obviously, you add more water. It's going to dilute it. That's what we call it in English. It will dilute it. But, of course, you're still getting more and more and more of the flavor out of the ingredients. So, in total, you're still going to get more flavor. Even if you keep filling it back up, even if you keep filling the pot back up to the same level you started at, you're still getting more and more and more of the flavor out of the ingredients. So you're adding flavor. So that's why it's going to take a while. You want to boil that for a long time. And it doesn't have to be like a really strong boil. You can have it at a fairly low temperature, just kind of boiling slowly. Really just needs to be hot in order to get the flavor out. And the second thing, and this is the reason it's going to cost you just a tiny bit more, is you want to double those ingredients. You want to double them to make sure you're getting even more of that flavor out. Okay? And I know this works because I've made this before, and I've finally managed to get this right. So double the ingredients, and then after it's boiled for a long time, and you can taste the broth and test it, see how it tastes. After that's done, then you remove all of those ingredients. And you're just going to throw them out. Don't worry, you're not wasting anything. You've got all the flavor out of them. It's all now in your broth. So you're not wasting anything by taking them out and throwing them out. That's why you want to boil it for a long time, because you want to get all that flavor out. So you take them all out and throw them away. And then you basically just continue with the rest of your recipe. With the chicken, the mushrooms, the shallots, maybe. We're going to talk about that one in a second. Okay. And then anything else you put in, like the next step we're going to talk about. Okay. So that's kind of the biggest thing. The last two things I do that are a little different are only sort of different. Some people do this. But from what I've seen, most people don't. This first one of these last two is to add in some cherry tomatoes. Cut them in half, add those in. Not everyone does that. If you boil them too long, they kind of boil down and almost go away. You're just left with kind of the skin in there. So, But I think it does add flavor. I think it's good. I like to do that. And the last one, and this is just a personal preference, so this is entirely up to you, is that instead of adding shallots, add in some onions. I prefer onions instead of shallots, but the flavor is quite similar. It's more just the texture because the onion gets really soft, and the shallot gets pretty soft as well, but a little less so. So, depends on what you prefer. And the taste is slightly different. And frankly, if you don't add a lot of them, so they don't overpower everything, you can add in both if you want. It's fine. Use onions and shallots. I have done that before. So, that's really personal preference. But it's just another idea to think about, is to possibly use onions instead of shallots. Depends on what flavor you like. Okay? Again, they're similar. It's not going to change it much. All right, so that's it. So that's how I do these two meals. And again, we didn't go through all the steps. I just went through everything I do that's different from what most Thai people do. And again, some of these are just different from what most people do. I might have said something here that you thought, oh, well, I do that already. Yes. Most people don't. Like the cherry tomatoes in Tom Yum Gai. Sure, some people put those in. I've ordered Tom Yum at a restaurant here, and there's tomatoes in there. Sure, yeah. Most people seem to not do that. And it doesn't even have to be cherry tomatoes, by the way. You can take larger tomatoes and just slice them up smaller. I just think the cherry tomatoes have a better flavor that fits the Tom Yum Gai, and that's simpler just to cut them in half and just shrink, and throw them in. That's just easier to do. So that's how I do these meals. And I can tell you that I've done both of them. I've done the Tom Yum Gai a lot more than the Mularb, but I've done the Mularb a couple times. They come out wonderful. So if you want to try these variations of what I do, give it a shot. Give it a shot. Try it and enjoy. All right, so that's our program for today. Thank you for joining us for today's An American in Thailand program. And let me just say to any younger people who might be listening out there, please consider our university here. We've got a great university here, RMUTP, Ratchamakon University of Technology, Peranakan. Also, stay with us and tune back in next week for another interesting episode. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.